Well, we're celebrating Palm Sunday, and so you saw the choir march in with their palms, and the children will join us after the service as service ends with their palms. And so we're celebrating the time when Jesus came through Jerusalem riding on the back of a donkey. Not exactly what they expected, a donkey. So when I think about this humble Jesus, I'm reminded of a story I heard, and some of you may know this story, but it's a story that in the Baptist church would not be very popular. Certainly a story that in some religious groups would be blasphemy, which was what Jesus was accused of later. But I want to share it with you because I think it might just give you a little lift. So it appears that Jesus and Satan had been arguing for quite some time about who was better at the computer. Now, I don't know how many of you are tech savvy, but I certainly wouldn't win that contest. However, God got tired of listening to the bickering back and forth, says, okay, guys, here, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you to the test. I'm going to give you a 2-hour test to see who is more efficient at using the computer. And so they nibble their fingers, and Jesus gets ready, and Satan gets ready to start the contest. And they're off. Jesus is typing at heavenly speed, and Satan is beating the hell out of those keys. And they text, they email, they do PowerPoint, they have spreadsheets, they tweet, they chat, they Facebook, they have emails with attachments, they download all kinds of programs. They're going 90 going north. God gets a little bored because 2 hours is a long time to wait for this contest to be over. And you know how gods do. They start doing other things. Well, he starts sending storms all over the place, just playing around, you know. And then lightning bolts. And after one too many lightning bolts, everything shut down. There was a power surge. Satan is yelling all kinds of expletives only heard of in the underworld. And Jesus is saying, oh, Lord, what's going on? God says, oops, sorry guys, I'll have this fixed in a minute. So he finally gets everything running back up again, and he says, I'll let you all start over. Satan's like, you got to be kidding me. Well, Satan's trying to find all of his documents, and he's searching and searching, and they're not there. And Jesus is very calm and very patient. He pulls up all of his spreadsheets. He gets all of his chats and his tweets. He has all of his emails and his attachments, and Satan is just incensed. Like, how did this happen? He cheated. He's your son, and you let him cheat. He says, no, Jesus saves. So let's talk about how Jesus saves. You know, when I speak to people outside of the Unity family, I'm often asked, well, does Unity believe in being saved? Are you saved? And I'm often wondering, saved from who and saved from what? Because we're all born the same. We're all born heirs to the kingdom. We're made in the image and likeness of the one God. So what are we to be saved from? So on Palm Sunday, here's Jesus riding into Jerusalem on this humble donkey, predicted in the Old Testament. In Zechariah, the 9th book, the 9th chapter, he said that there would be a Messiah, and he would be riding in on a donkey, on the colt. And years and years and years later, 300 years later, or 500 years later, here comes Jesus riding in. But most people didn't know the prophecy. They just knew that there was going to be someone coming soon to save them from torture, to save them from persecution, to save them from Roman rule. And the Jews just knew this was possibly a prophet come. Many did know that he was the Messiah, but many were afraid of the truth. So when Jesus rides in on a donkey, many are asking, how can a king of kings, ride in on a donkey? He can't be the King of Kings. He can't be the Messiah because he would come in on a brilliant steed in royal regalia. He had on commoner's clothes on purpose because he wanted to show the humility of the Christ, the humility of ourselves. Now, Jesus taught using parables which are stories within stories, stories that have sometimes hidden meanings or more than one meaning. Precepts, which are truths that are unchangeable. Miracles, which he performed supernaturally to show the power of God and the power of God in us. And my favorite of the miracles is the feeding of the 5,000. So today I titled my talk, Waste Not, Want Not. In Matthew, the 14th chapter, the 13th through the 21st verse, we read that Jesus had just heard the news that his friend, John the Baptist, his mentor, his rabbi, had been beheaded for the same reason that Jesus was about to be crucified, and he knew it, for preaching the good news, for telling people that they are children of the loving God. So Jesus was distraught, and he decides to get on his boat, just step out on the boat, sit down, and go into the silence. He didn't know where else to go but to the silence, to pray. And so when he did, the crowds who had already begun to gather, because they had been hearing that this Messiah was coming, and they had already started to gather on the shore. Is that him? I believe it is. Jesus saw the crowd gathering and decided that he needed to do something for them, not just sit there. And so he performed more miracles. He went to the crowd and he saw that there were some of them who were sick, and he healed them. And then there were more believers because they witnessed it. They experienced it. Daylight was going quickly, and Jesus realized that the people had been there all day waiting for him and for a sign that he was the Messiah, and that they were probably hungry. And he sent one of the disciples, Philip, representing the power of power, to get food. And the disciples go, where are we going to get food at this late hour? And how can you feed 5,000 men, women, and children? Because that's how many they thought were gathered there. Well, you remember that Jesus talked about this living water and this manna that will fill you up. That's totally different than anything you can purchase in the grocery store. It's spiritual food. So we're talking about spiritual substance when he said, feed my sheep. Spiritual substance. And there was a little boy there with a lunch, as the story is told. He had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And he said, here, you can take my lunch. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever had a dinner party, but if you had maybe 50 people, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish is not going to go very far. And 5,000 people? I don't know about that. But Jesus put the super on the natural, broke the bread and blessed it, and then others began to share what they had brought with them. And pretty soon there was more than enough to feed everyone. And he told them to sit down on the ground. In other words, lower your vibration so that you can receive. You know, they're anxious, they're hungry for the truth. They want this Messiah to bless them with the truth. Tell us, show us, free us. Hosanna means save us now. Save us now from Roman rule. But they didn't realize Jesus came for a different purpose, to save them from themselves. And so they sit down, they become humble, and they become fed with spiritual nourishment. Waste not, want not. There were 12 baskets left over. And Jesus made sure that all those around on the other shores were fed as well. Enough to feed more than 5,000, just from a few meager morsels of bread and fish. How many times do we think we don't have enough? John 6:12 said, and when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftovers that nothing may be lost. That nothing may be lost. Now, I have a really good friend here who doesn't know I'm going to call on her, but we have a lot in common with our mothers. And the two of us, and Dr. Catherine Thomas, and there might be some others here who helped us, started the Toastmasters Club here in 1995, and that's how I met Mary Ellen Vincent. And Mary Ellen gave one of her talks about recycling. And I've never forgotten that, all the way, but 20-some years ago, I still remember that talk. And I so resonated with it because our mothers come from the same generation. They're both Depression-era women. And Mary Ellen talked about how her mother would wrap their sandwiches up in wax paper. Now, Mary Ellen, just to remind you of where you come from, this is your sandwich bag with Mary Ellen on it. And in it, to remind you of those humble years, is your peanut butter and jelly sandwich wrapped in wax paper and an apple. Now, Mary Ellen said that she had to bring this bag home, even if it was soiled, every day from school. And the wax paper had to be reused. It was wiped off and folded, and that happened until the bag fell apart and the wax paper was so gummed up that it couldn't be used again. Now, my mother is Depression era also. And this is yours because we're staying for the film this afternoon. So I thought we might get hungry. My mother would when our clothes were worn, instead of throwing them out, she would cut them into strips and make rag rugs. I still have a couple of those, all by hand. She would take what strips she could make bigger, and she would make quilts. As I was walking through the art gallery out here, Gallery Hall, and saw the work of Gary Dykman, it reminded me of my mother's quilts. They sort of looked like that. Waste not, want not. Nothing was ever wasted. We didn't have a lot of garbage to put out on trash day. Everything was reusable, recycled. We didn't have a lot of leftovers. We ate what we had, and we always had enough because we didn't waste anything. And this is what Jesus was saying. You know, he didn't say, let's, pick up all the trash and let's throw it in the trash can, right? He didn't say that. He said, let's collect all the leftovers and share them. Waste not, want not. So how does this relate to us today? Because we're showing the film Paris to Pittsburgh this afternoon in partnership with the University of Missouri, Kansas City and the city of Kansas City, Missouri, I thought it would be fitting to talk about what would Jesus do in a time like this when we're so wasteful? How would he instruct us to feed the 5,000? Do you know over 42 million Americans are in food insecure households? Now that term food insecure is kind of new to me. They're starving, okay? They're hungry. They're hungry. 1/3 of the food produced for human consumption in this country alone is either lost or discarded. Enough to feed 2 billion people on this planet. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. My refrigerator's like a revolving door. But I'm becoming more conscious of it and more conscious of other ways that we waste. We waste time, we waste energy, we waste resources, we waste people. We look at people as if they're not good enough to do certain things. We need all of us. When I hear things on the news about certain people not being accepted or not being wanted in certain places, it bothers me because we need all of our resources. No one should be wasted. Everyone has a gift to contribute. Everyone. The more we waste, the more we want. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, there are more food reaches landfills than any other municipal solid waste in this country. Can you believe that? And when that garbage decays, it releases 50% of the methane gas that poisons our system and poisons us. Whether we know it or not, we're all affected. We may not be living in an underdeveloped country, but we're all affected by our waste. It's often said that we inherited the earth, but someone has said we do not inherit the earth, we borrow it from our children. And the children who will stand up here on this stage after the service are the beneficiaries of how we treat the earth today. The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. So next Monday, the day after Easter, is Earth Day. But every day should be Earth Day. Since it falls on the day after Easter, we decided we would do something special before that, so we're doing the film this afternoon. And it's about all kinds of things that affect climate change, in addition to the wastefulness of our resources, and food is one of those. Transportation. Much of our daily greenhouse gases come from the food supply that decays. We have fuel and power issues. We are wasteful. But the goal is, by 2050, to reduce the wastefulness, to make more sustainable technologies. Do you know that, and I didn't know this, but 25% of our electrical waste is sold to China. And they turn that waste, the electrical waste, into things we discard, like old electrical extension cords, anything that we discard that's electrical. They turn that into household gadgets and toys that you and I buy back. We buy back our trash. One country's trash is another's treasure, right? The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says about 800 million people on the planet do not get enough food to eat. 800 million. And we could feed 2 billion with the trash we have left over that we pile into the landfills. So if Jesus could satisfy the hunger of 5,000, what could we possibly do if we were better stewards of our environment? Jesus told his disciples on Monday, Thursday, that he was going to wash their feet, and he proceeded to do so. And they, Rabbi, you know, you don't need to lower yourself. No, I'm not lowering myself. I'm not here to be served. I'm here to serve. That should be all of our roles. If we can take a page from Jesus' book, it would be to serve in whatever way we can, whatever gifts we have, whatever resources we have. We should be thinking every day, how can I turn this resource that might seem like trash to me into a source of survival to someone else? How can I do that? We should come to serve and not to be served. There's a Native American proverb that says, man belongs to the earth does not belong to man. We're just on borrowed time here and borrowed landscape. But when we're good stewards of the planet, our children and their children and their children's children will benefit for ages to come if we stop being greedy. I believe that's what Jesus meant in the precept when he said it would be easier for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Those of us who have too much, have more than enough, often want more and more and more. And we don't think about the fact that some would take what little we discard, and it would be a feast for them. So during this time of Palm Sunday, I invite you to think about that. How can you be a beneficial presence on this earth by sharing what you have? What your little 5 loaves and your 2 fish can feed a multitude. The Dalai Lama said, this planet is our only home. We are responsible for taking care of it. And he said, I'm happy to see leaders now taking climate change seriously. In Genesis, the 1st chapter, the 28th verse, in the very beginning, we were told that we are the caretakers of all the earth's inhabitants. We have dominion, we have power, we have authority over all the earth's inhabitants. That is a responsibility. So I know some of you come to church to be inspired, to be uplifted. Some of you come to church to hear the music. That's what I come for, to hear the music. Some of you come to church to hear the message, and you wonder, is this message for me? And I'm hoping that something that I say to you about being better caretakers of your own landscape, your own environment, will make you a better steward, and all of us better stewards of our environment. Gary, who did the artwork that's in the hallway, I suggest you see that after church in the gallery, was 30 years a teacher in the Olathe School District. And he's a cancer survivor. He goes around and collects old fence wood. When he finds out fences are being torn down, he takes the slats and turns it into beautiful art. He repurposes it into art. That's one way that we can save the planet. We don't have to throw everything into a garbage pile. Some things have more than one use. If not for us, there are certainly others, because one person's trash is another's treasure. So I want you to think about this as I close and we move into meditation. You are more than enough. You have more than enough. Whatever the challenges you may be facing or your neighbors may be facing, you have everything you need to satisfy that hunger or that thirst. As you turn within, as Jesus did on that boat, after hearing about the death of John the Baptist, as you turn within, think about what is mine to do to contribute to the growth of this planet? What is mine to do to be a beneficial presence to the environment? Let's take that thought as we move into meditation.